You know, bottom balsers are such a deadly presentation for walleye fishing. You know, they're kid friendly. You can use bottom balsers as beginning anglers. It's just something where you just hold onto the rod or put the rod in the rod holder and they're going to catch fish. And basically, you know, a lot of times you're just letting out enough line where that bottom balser's ticking the bottom and lines at about a 45-degree angle as a rule of thumb. And so one tool that's really handy using bottom balsers, especially if you have a boat full of people, is using a low profile line counter reel. So this particular reel is called the Cold Water Series. It's sold by Scheels. And it's a low profile reel that you can fit in your hand. There's left and right hand models. There's a flipping switch, which makes it nice for letting out line easy with one hand. So these low profile reels with the line counter can be really handy for running bottom balsers because basically you can run several rods in the boat and just keep everybody from getting tangled up. And so maybe on the front of the boat, for example, you might have somebody letting out 15 feet of line. Back of the boat, you might be running 12 feet of line just to keep everybody staggered. The other thing is sometimes you're going to find a sweet spot where, for whatever reason, say, you know, in 10 feet of water, for example, letting out, say, 12, 13 feet, you're barely ticking the bottom. You can distinguish and feel the bites. If you let out too much line, you're bogging down the bottom and you're not feeling the bites. And so line counters on bottom balsers are a very useful tool. The other thing is, like, this is just a 7-foot rod and it's a pretty heavy action rod in the sense it's a medium heavy fast tip. I like to use a heavier tip on a rod because what I find, especially if I'm running bottom balsers and rod holders, we're dealing with a lot of snags, especially when we're using bottom balsers on some of these road beds like we're fishing on Devil's Lake. You're hitting rocks and you're making that heavy contact, and that stiffer rod will pop that bottom balancer out of the snags. And so if you have too soft of a rod, what happens is that bottom balancer just loads up and it gets hung up in the snag. And so don't be afraid to use a little bit stiffer rod when you're running bottom balancers. And so that stiffer rod just pops right through.